Hey everybody, happy Wine Wednesday. I'm actually running so late that I'm sipping on little bottles of wine. It works, right? I had to stop on the way home, but that's okay. I've got my Chardonnay. Holly, what are you drinking on?
I'm drinking cran pineapple juice, this 5 calorie juice that Ocean, what is it? Ocean whatever cranberry juice makes. Oh, it's so good. And it's
Nice.
only 5 calories for 8 ounces. So, and it tastes amazing. You cannot tell it's a diet drink.
That is so cool. I'll have to try it. Okay, so it is open chat tonight, everyone. Hey Zen, I see you out there. Um, we're still waiting for when you're ready to jump in. I know February is literally like in a day, right? So we're ready for you. Hope you're doing well though. And I have been crazy busy. My boss is on vacation again, so I'm working 5 a.m. Oh, it's been a rough week. So apologies we're so late. My fault completely. Like I said, sipping on little wine or little teeny wines tonight because I had to stop and had to take what they had available. But I didn't have any specific topic or guest for tonight, so it is open chat. Anything you want to ask or discuss, feel free. Otherwise, it'll be a short session tonight. Holly does have a few topics we need to chit chat about, so we're going to jump right into that. But as always, if you have questions or anything you want to have discussed either tonight or another night, put it in the comment section, and we will make sure that it does get discussed. But Holly, with that, I'm not sure where Ray's at. It could be that I was running so late he left. Very possible, guys. I'm sorry. I'll get on the ball here shortly. Boss is back Monday, so next week should be much better. But Holly, I'm going to hand it over to you. So tell me, first of all, what's going on with you and your tanks and your seahorses.
Okay, so if you remember last week, my controller fell into this.
Right.
This goes to this skimmer, and so I've been without a skimmer. The good news is that the company that makes it, Simplicity, they do a bunch of different aquarium stuff, and it turns out they're a great company. So I still have the paperwork to it. I went online and found them. And the skimmers actually have a 3-year warranty. I didn't know that.
Oh,
I mean, what happened was my fault. So I didn't make a claim on the warranty, but I called them directly and I talked to someone there. They're down in Southern California, the LA area. And so he said they do have those controllers and he can send me one. It's only about $20, which isn't bad at all, I thought. But he did say that they couldn't send it right away because guess what? They're in the middle of moving their warehouse.
oh wow.
and
Jeez.
and and so I have to wait. I got an email from them. I think it's shipping out today. I don't know if it did because I haven't received the email confirming that and the distributor billing me for it. So hopefully it did, and I just haven't received the email from them yet. But so anyway, the controller is coming, but in the meanwhile, it's extra work for me because since I have no skimmer, the way I'm handling it is extra water changes. So
Right.
I'm doing like 2 a week instead of once a week right now. And the seahorses, they all seem fine so far. But I mean, we all know sometimes things affect them way later.
Sure.
So right now they're okay though, and I'm still waiting for the controller to get here. And then the other night had a scare. I come out to get a drink of water. I'm getting ready for bed. Yeah, I say goodnight to my husband, and I happen to look, thankfully, at my display tank, and Dandy had his head stuck in a decoration,
Oh no. Oh
which,
no.
which is not uncommon for him. He
Hmm.
has a hard time getting around. He gets stuck. So anyway, I go to rescue him. I couldn't get him out. Of course, he's scared, so he's frozen up and stiff as a board, won't
Yep.
move. And I was not strong enough to pry apart the decoration.
Sure.
So Scott brought the hatchet from the fireplace and pried it apart. And
I can just see this picture. I can really truly picture this. This is awesome, right?
and so Dandy was fine, but of course he was scared.
Hmm.
So, I had a hold of him and he held on to my finger with his tail real tight. And
Right.
then I lowered him down to his area where he likes to hitch. And he laid there not as long as I thought. He didn't play dead for long, like maybe because it was nighttime already and kind of dark, maybe that helped him. But anyway, so he got up after a few seconds of being curled up in a ball and kind of looked around and swam in a
Yep.
circle for a bit and found his hitch and hitched up for the night. And next day it took him a little bit to eat. He was kind of a
Hmm.
little shook up still, but Sadie came by and ate from his dish and showed him it was safe. So he
Yeah.
settled in, started eating, and then he was fine after that.
Well, and it's a good point to make, that, when you're choosing decorations for your tank, think that through, because seahorses are
Mhm.
extremely curious, right? Anything, Holly and I have talked a lot of times. And hi, Ray. I saw you join. Hello.
Hello.
So Holly and I have talked endlessly about, seahorses. You put something new in the tank and all of a sudden they're kind of attracted to it and they're checking it out and they're wanting to know what it is. And then it may become their favorite thing to hitch on, right? But when you're adding things to your tank, always try to be careful. Like I've had trouble with certain, like even fake plants that
Mhm.
have the more stiff, rigid edges, because they will, try to go through them, try to be on top of them, try to eat
Yeah.
them. I mean, they're gonna figure out what this thing is that you added to the tank.
Yeah.
And if they're a little more curious than other seahorses, they can very well get stuck. I've had a seahorse get stuck and things. Even when you're talking about, if you use rock and do an aquascape, I like to build with my rocks, right? So
Mhm.
I like to have
Mhm.
caves and caverns and, things shooting out everywhere. But you got to be careful that there's no small spaces that they can poke through and get stuck, because they see a hole and they think, oh, I'm going to go through this, and then they can't back up. Like they don't have any sense of reverse, right? So just something to consider.
And Dandy's a little different because he has trouble swimming, so he gets stuck in anything. He gets stuck
Right.
where other seahorses don't get stuck.
Sure.
Just because he falls and he'll fall into a crack. Like it was literally the V of a
Mhm.
coral. So his head
Yep.
was like right down here.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but on another note, that reminds me, I forgot to tell you this. So
Okay.
last week I had to pull the saloon doors.
Okay.
Which everybody loved those saloon doors, but
Yeah, mine love
they have
them.
outgrown them. One of my girls got stuck in it.
Oh no. Oh
And I
no.
got her out, and she wasn't bad stuck, but she couldn't go through anymore, and she wanted to. So
You
I
you know
got
what
her to
though?
back up, and then I took it out. I'm all sorry, guys.
You know
You're too
what
big
though?
now.
That's actually quite a praise to you that your seahorses are so big that they can't fit through that. I mean, mine still do. So, you know, it is what it is. And I wanted to ask you about your first topic too. How has it affected you and your schedule? Just because when people, I know Zen, I did see your question. We're about to discuss it, I promise. But just in an overall general sense for like you, Holly,
Mhm.
when something like a skimmer breaks, or if someone sets up a tank maybe without even a skimmer or without a sump or whatnot and has to do a lot more water changes to compensate for that, has it really affected your schedule? Like do you feel that it's better to buy more equipment that will do that maintenance stuff for you, or, have replacements versus having to do those extra water
Well,
changes?
I
And
definitely do because it costs me more money too. I'm going through
right.
more salt.
Yep. And water.
So, yeah, so the 2 water changes a week. I mean, it's only been a week,
Right.
so I've only done 1 extra water changes, but
Right.
if it continues,
It could get
that's
costly.
not good because,
Right.
yeah, that's it takes me I had to make an extra thing of RODI water, which takes time. I had to make, 4 more buckets of that than I usually do, more salt, the time of actually doing it. And when I did it, I didn't clean their tank. I just changed out the water.
Gotcha.
And like today's their tank cleaning day, and I didn't clean the algae and because I didn't want the stuff floating around with no skimmer to help me
Yep.
pull it out. So I did a light cleaning and just did the water change until the skimmer controller gets here. So basically, I'm just changing water extra
Well,
time.
and I
I
think
mean,
that's
that's a pain. It is a pain.
I know, but I would also say I think that what you just said is also smart. Just I keep you're saying things and I'm like, that's a good point. So the
Mhm.
point that she just made that she didn't know she was making is that you got to remember when we're talking about algae and organics and that kind of stuff. Let's just stick with algae. When we're talking about nuisance algae in a seahorse tank, it's very irritating to us. We don't
Mhm.
like it. It's ugly. It's ruining our scape. It's ruining our glass. Whatever, but it's actually helping the tank. And I know
Mhm.
that's like you're like, wait, what? But it really is. So I've told the story before when my mom passed away and I kind of just let everything go to shit, to be honest. My 65-gallon got just covered in this gross, hairy, slimy nuisance algae. And after months of me not taking care of this tank, I was like, hey, Dan, why are my seahorses still cool? And he was like, it's because of that stuff, because it's literally taking up what you're
Mhm.
not taking out, which is not good. None of that's good. You don't want that to happen. I'm not encouraging it, but I'm just saying I think you're really smart, Holly, for just instead of having it blowing around and,
Mhm.
getting, releasing stuff because you're agitating it, talking about the nuisance algae, just leaving it be until you have the skimmer back and you're able to do a thorough cleaning, I think is really smart, if that makes sense. Um, Go ahead. Sorry. I'm reading other questions too.
So yeah, so that was it for my week. All that's happened with me, but all my seahorses are doing well. Everyone seems healthy and happy right now. But I did have someone whose post I saw on
Okay.
this horses help and advice thing
Yep.
that I wanted to share.
And Holly got permission to share this. And Ray, I'm so glad that you did come because you're better at diagnosis and this kind of thing. So she's getting ready to tell us the story, and then as soon as we cover this, I'm gonna go to. I see two different questions from Zen, and she's our kind of our channel manager, so we got to make sure we get to those. But Coral Works, yeah, just like the forest traps carbon, the algae is trapping nutrients out of the water column. And to be clear, that's not something you can just leave. For instance, I got really lucky that after my mom passed and this tank got covered with algae, I got really lucky that it continued to grow and trap nutrients because a lot of times with like an algae scrubber or something like that, if you have if algae grows on top of each other, say, then you've got dead stuff underneath, and it like if it gets too bad, it's going to become a problem. I was not at all saying that that's a good way to go about handling a tank, just letting things go nuts. It was a crisis for me, and it was just lucky for me that it was a big enough tank that things kept growing algae wise and were taking up the nutrients. But if you think about it in a normal situation, if you're using something like an algae scrubber or a refugium in a sump, the whole point is that you remove that algae weekly. So then it grows back and it takes up more nutrients, and you're removing the nutrients when you remove the algae, right? So I wanted to make that point because I don't want anybody to be like, oh, I can let my tank go to, poo and let it get covered and it'll be fine, because it won't. It's not a good thing. Okay, moving on. So Ray, Holly's going to tell us this story, and then I'm going to share the pictures that we got permission to share. Go ahead, Holly. You can.
So actually, what I'm going to do is just share the post because you can read it. It's kind
Okay.
of long.
Okay.
So that way I won't get anything wrong.
Okay.
So I'll set up to share that.
And yeah, Coral Works. If the algae died off, it would have released all the nutrients all at once into the water, which can be hazardous. I actually had that happen in a dwarf lionfish tank where it was a smaller tank and I was using Caulerpa in the tank and I was using it on purpose, right? And some of it grew under a rock. It wasn't even like I let the tank go. It was just that this Caulerpa grew under a rock, died, killed itself basically, and then released everything that was in it. And I woke up to so white, cloudy a tank that I could not see the lionfish. And he finally came up it was an awful situation. He was gasping for air because you got to think when algae releases everything, carbon dioxide, oxygen, you're going to have oxygenation problems too. So absolutely great point. Thank you for making it. And Ray saw the post, and Holly, go ahead and I will share what you're showing us. Go ahead.
Okay, so I can read it, what
Okay, go
she says,
ahead.
and then at the bottom of it, there's pictures. So
Okay.
anyway, so Karen says, please help me figure out what's going on with this guy. Of note, our other seahorse is completely fine with no symptoms like this sick seahorse. Approximately 1 year ago, this seahorse began to not be able to stay off the bottom of the tank. I also noted a light film over his nose, probably before the sinking actually, but it didn't appear to be snout rot. Also, he eats like a champ. We figured it was our tank parameters and fixed those, but there was no improvement. Next, I read about oxygen exchange issues related to the bladder and pouch, etc., and tried a methylene blue dip. We
Yep.
also added an air stone to the tank to help with gas exchange at the water's surface. No improvement. Since he was eating and seemed otherwise unaffected, we decided to take a wait and see approach. Over time, it appeared as if his abdomen was becoming filled with gas, yet he was still sinking to the bottom, not floating to the top.
Oof.
To be thorough, I did try expressing any gas that might be in there to no avail. In fact, the pouch pretty much deflated at my touch.
Yep.
Now he's in a hospital tank. I treated him for 5 days with anti-parasitic with no improvement. And yes, I do know if he has parasites, I need to do a second treatment to get any eggs that have hatched. Then I did a 5-day course of Canaplex and Maricin too. This covers two drug classes, aminoglycosides and tetracyclines, and both are fairly broad spectrum antibiotics. Again, I saw no measurable improvement. That treatment ended yesterday. Now, I'm also getting really worried about the way his snout looks. He's had that film there for years and has never affected him. It looks like it's starting to develop over one of his eyes. He is still eating, believe it or not. Honestly, other than the sinking to the bottom and the film on his snout, he's a perfectly normal seahorse. Yes, I know that sounds ridiculous, but you know what I mean. So, what are your thoughts? What options should I consider? I do have acetazolamide on hand, but I don't think this is a gas bubble disease issue.
No. No.
Then again, I'm not a seahorse expert, just a pharmacist. Do I go ahead and retreat for any possible parasites? Do I proceed with another antibiotic? Does anyone think this is gas bubble disease and I should go on with the acetazolamide next? Is there something I'm missing that's so wrong that he should be euthanized? Is it possibly that I simply have a disabled seahorse and he can live a long and happy life just the way he is? I ask because it's strange that my other seahorse is perfectly fine.
Yep.
Thank you for any and all insight you can give me. Also, note the mice's shrimp floating around in the tank are because I just fed him and turned off the pump while he's trying to eat.
Okay.
So here's her pictures. And the way he acts kind of reminds me of Dandy.
All right. Play that.
So I mentioned that part to her and shared a video of Dandy also on her post.
Okay.
But then it does look like to me too, on top of that, he has a tail bubble thing, looks like. Couple
I
towards
see.
the
I
bottom
see
of his
that.
tail,
Mm-hmm.
which my guess is unrelated to the swimming issue.
No, I agree. That even looks like I'm curious, Ray, do you think that looks like it could be just injury?
I have no idea what it
Oh,
is, but
okay.
the spots on the tail were the things that, to me, uh, when it's in a picture like that, the only thing I can think is that an infection is starting on it.
That's
Right.
kind of what
Uh,
I'm thinking. And
Yeah.
she said that did just appear just the other day. So
yeah.
that's new. And then I've never seen anything
Can you click on
like
it and
this
make it bigger? Are you
film.
able? Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
And there's another. See?
Yep. To me, that I mean, Ray, what's your thoughts? You have more experience than I do.
Well, basically, I didn't answer on that because I don't really know
Hmm.
an answer for it. But comments that I need to make. First of all, uh, concerned that one was affected and not the other. Well, that can happen if this one has a significantly
Weaker immune.
weaker
Yeah.
immune
Hmm.
system than the other one, and the other one's still able to resist it, whatever the cause is. Um, the other thing is the drug treatment. She did it for 5 days. Normally, with a seahorse, we do the first phase is 10 days. If we do another one, it's another 10 days. 5 days is insufficient when you're coming to seahorse problems.
Okay.
Being my experience over all these years, and I think Dan was probably the first one that mentioned it back 20 years ago.
Sure.
Um,
The other.
but anyway,
Go ahead.
the spots on the tail, to me, they look like an infection starting. What's on the nose, I have no idea. And why it's on the bottom, again, I have no idea. But I agree that it's definitely not in need of Diamox because it's not a gas disease of any kind. There could have been when the abdomen was filling up, it could have been a fluid situation,
Yes.
thing internal. Um, and that wouldn't make it float, it would be on the bottom.
Ray,
Um,
real quick, let me ask you. Hey,
could be a swim bladder issue and
that's yeah.
makes it difficult for it to get up, elevate itself off the bottom. So it may be more comfortable staying on the bottom then just because of that difficulty that's having. Again, the reason for why it's having that difficulty, I don't know.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up because I'll never forget Dan mentioning if the seahorse floats, it's gas bubble. If it stays at the bottom and can't get off the bottom, then it's a swim bladder or renal issue. Right. So, and those aren't things you can really treat very easily. That's something with the seahorse, right?
Well, if we knew it was renal, Diamox helps with some renal problems, but we don't know. We don't have what is the word I want? We don't have a list of things that we know that Diamox is going to work for and the ones that isn't when it comes to renal. As a matter of fact, we have extreme difficulty without having it checked after it's dead, and able to determine just what the renal problem is, or if a renal problem is definitely the problem.
Sure. No, I get what you're saying. That's why I said often, unfortunately, when it is uh, when the seahorse is at the bottom, it's a much more difficult situation, in my opinion, because you can't. There's not known treatments for swim bladder and or not known and effective, I should say, treatments. Everybody, somebody's going to pop up and say, "Oh, this works," sure, but not consistently, not you know, constantly, not with every person. So it's not something we can actually recommend. It's much harder when the seahorse. And then Holly, you have a
And like
different opinion. Yeah.
and here's like Dandy, he he just has trouble swimming, getting around. But it's interesting because he'll go to the top sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how we got stuck. Was he was trying to get up into an up high hitch, but
Right.
see, this is his favorite hitch, and he hitches on there, and he hitches on that dragon, and a few other things. But it's hard for him to get around.
Sure.
He runs into stuff. He has trouble holding on to stuff. He he sits upright sometimes, but very rarely. Usually he'll hitch, but he likes to lay on stuff or have something prop him up.
But he still has a happy little life where you
Yeah,
take
and
care of
he's
him.
he's 5 years old now.
Yeah.
He turns 5 this coming month. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't worry about him now. I just try to take care of him the best I can.
Well, and sometimes when you start using meds, like I know Ray's favorite thing is to pull a seahorse. If you think there's a problem, pull a seahorse, put him in a hospital tank. But that doesn't necessarily mean instantly start medicating, because meds can't. Too many medications can cause renal problems and bladder and all that stuff. That so you could be adding to the problem by throwing medications in. Um, Ray, what were you saying?
Um, with Holly, hers was like that right from the
No,
start,
no, it wasn't. Nope.
wasn't?
No, it
Oh, I'm
developed
sorry.
well fairly because I got him naturally, when he was a young seahorse, about 5 or 6 months, most likely. And
Yeah.
that slowly developed when he was about, I want to say he was around 8 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got worse for a while, but it's weird. He has like good good times sometimes where he'll get around better than others. So I just
Mm-hmm.
don't know. But like I
Well,
said, I just try to take care of him, and
and,
he's
and in my opinion, I think that it's just like people. I mean, this seahorse that we're looking at right now, that we're talking about, obviously with the tail problems coming, there's something wrong. I'm not saying there's not, but like with Dandy, I feel like sometimes there are just seahorses that are born and you don't know it right away, and then they have mental issue or whatever issues, but not issues that put them down, if that makes sense.
and he may have always had issue, but I think I didn't notice at first that he was different because he was my first seahorse.
Right. Yeah.
But
And
yeah, he
I'll never forget when I first got seahorses from Holly. I literally was like, "Am I doing something wrong? What's wrong with them? They stay at the bottom of the tank." And she was like, "Mine just do." And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. In most cases, Dandy's is an exception, but I mean, Aphrodite still stays hidden a lot at the bottom of the tank. It's just that seahorse's personality. There's nothing wrong with her. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. So
Yeah,
some,
my other ones do, but they travel. Now Sadie doesn't. She
Mhm.
swims up high and hitches up high and acts what I consider normal. The ones in my other tank, they stay low, but if they want to go across the tank, they'll swim up high and go straight across the tank like there's nothing wrong. So they just don't like to, I guess, in that tank.
Which, right. And
I don't know.
yeah. And to me, when, that was something completely new to me because my seahorses are always mainly higher in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and you know what? That could actually seriously be like just the way your tank's set up. Like maybe my tank has
Uh-huh.
more oxygenation issues or something. Whatever. Who knows? Where my seahorses like to stay higher because the oxygen, whatever,
Yeah,
is
I
greater.
don't know.
Who
But
knows? It
Sage.
also could be. We could dive into a deep conversation. We're not going to tonight, but we could dive into a deep conversation if we got some experts in here about the generation of seahorses. Like for instance, if you have first, second generation of fry, then um, you're less likely to have problems. As you breed down in generations, you're going to see more problems because just like people, as you breed down into generations, that becomes a bad thing, right? So you don't know what the breeder's done. Go with a respectable breeder. I know Holly did. I'm sure this other person did. I'm just saying, I'm just coming up with points to make about it. Am I supposed to be still sharing? I stopped sharing, Holly.
Oh, okay. I'll
Oh,
turn this
sorry.
off then.
I mean, I can
No, I
say
was
it
just
again.
showing the video. In this video, you can see more of the tail stuff going on. So it looks like it is getting a tail infection.
Yeah, something's going on with the tail. Is this seahorse in a hospital tank, by the way?
Yeah, that's why it looks so
Okay.
small. It's in a hospital tank
Okay.
right now.
Okay, at this point in time, I think I'd kind of ignore the original problems
Okay.
Mhm.
and deal with the spots on the tail, just in case it is a bacterial infection. So that would mean while it's in the hospital tank now, start another 10-day treatment.
Mm-hmm.
You may have to follow it with a further 10-day treatment later with the antibacterial agent that she's using.
Mhm.
And if if it does turn out that it was a bacterial infection, then that also tells her that she has problems in the display tank that should be rectified. And that's likely going to mean more due diligence when doing the clean and maybe more frequent and larger water
Sure.
changes and it, to improve that quality. And she needs to understand too that the water quality can be deteriorating, even though all the test kits that we have show that everything is fine.
Yep.
Mainly because the thing that deteriorates, we don't have test kits to be able to test for.
Sure. I would say too, just commenting on Ray's comment, that when you do post that you've got a problem, the way you're going to get the most help is if when you do the post, you don't just say, hey, I've had this seahorse for 8 months and all of a sudden it's acting this way and I'm not sure what's going on. Obviously, this person that we're talking about tonight did a very detailed post. Very good. However, the one thing that I'm missing is tell me about the tank, right? Do you
Mhm.
have a skimmer?
Yeah.
How often do you do water changes? What's the equipment you're using? How big's the tank? Is it overcrowded? How often do you feed? And I know that, like I know when I first started on Facebook and I first got seahorses, I would do a post and ask a question and it would piss me off, you guys, because somebody like Ray or somebody like me would get on there and be like, okay, wait, before you get any answers, answer these 5 other questions. And I'd be like, I just need to know what's wrong. But it matters, right? It
Yeah.
matters, so I would just say make sure when you do a post like that to give your tank parameters, your tank specs, what equipment you have going on, because adding a skimmer, like Holly's nervous right now because her skimmer is malfunctioned and she knows she has to up the water changes because her skimmer's not working. Whereas maybe someone doesn't know that they even need a skimmer, right? So make sure to include your tank specs, is all I'm saying. Um, and real quick, a Facebook user said, could it be film algae stuck on his snout? Can you put up the snout picture again, Holly? Are you able?
Yeah.
All
Let's
right.
see.
And I agree, it doesn't look like a wound. Would she be advised to wipe it off with a Q-tip? So you're going to get difference of opinions on this. I am absolutely opposed to wiping things off of a seahorse. I've seen too many seahorses get skin problems because someone's trying to clean algae off their seahorse or clean a film off a seahorse or whatever. Typically, seahorses grow these algae, films, etc., for a reason, right? So if you just try to wipe it off, you're kind of doing the opposite of what needs to happen. And I know a lot of people like taking Q-tips and cleaning off a seahorse, but I personally had an issue where I tried to clear a seahorse of algae that was growing upon it, and I ended up having to treat that seahorse for a skin infection. So I would just say be wary of going in and trying to do that. That's my opinion. Others might have different opinions. And Zen asked, can you use things like hydrogen peroxide on a seahorse wound or film, even in that case? Just wondering if it would help or hurt. So, first thing I'm going to say is it's really hard with pictures because I've had seahorses grow what looks to be a film and ended up extremely beautiful saddle marks, right? Or extremely beautiful coloration. With seahorses, it's really hard to tell if it's a problem or if it's just that, they're coming into their own, so to speak. Because I'm right there with you guys. I've sent detailed pictures and questions to Dan and said, look, his snout looks black. Why is that? Or look, all of a sudden there's this patch that looks like a film on his side. Should I be worried? And it literally 99% of the time ends up being nothing. It's coloration. It's what they're growing. In this case, Ray, does that look like a film to you on his snout?
I honestly can't tell you
Yeah.
from looking at it.
Yeah, I really don't know.
Unlike you, I'm one that if I don't know what it is, I know what algae looks like on a seed course,
Right,
so that's
right,
not
right.
a problem. But if I don't know what it is, I would dab at it with a Q-tip very, very
There you
gently,
go.
and see what results happen. If flesh comes away with it, then it's rot. But this has been for a year, and if it was rot, it would have done.
Rotted.
It would either have gotten better or it would have got a lot worse by now. It wouldn't have stayed the same.
Holly, did she say it was progressively getting worse? The snout part.
She said it's spreading closer to his eye now, like
Okay.
near his eyes. It's spread, but it hasn't caused him any problems. Like she said, he's still eating, but
And that's a key thing to me also is if the seahorse is eating. Like if the seahorse is eating, then I'm not freaking out as much as I would be if he wasn't, right? I know that doesn't help much. And I can do some background checking with some other people because I mean I'm with Ray. I've never seen that where it looks like almost like a fungus growing and spreading. But the fact that he's still eating, I don't think I'd do anything really drastic yet. Maybe treat for the tail, as Ray said. Definitely do that. But I wouldn't be.
That may also help that film on
Right.
the snout.
Exactly.
Because what she's done there, that 5-day treatment is insufficient.
Right.
But she has no way to know that because she hasn't been into seahorses long enough to find that kind of information.
Right. Because for an average fish, that would be maybe I don't even know, but maybe sufficient. But with seahorses, it is a prolonged treatment versus I agree with you, Ray. Totally. Okay.
I put that medication treatment thing for all the various ones on my website, so maybe she could have a look at that.
Yeah, find me the link and I'll post it. Absolutely. So our basic thoughts and advice at this point are to focus on the tail, treat for the tail, prolong treatment, and see where we go from there. Correct? Okay, Ray's looking for his.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I would say.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Here's I'm putting the link here on our message thing.
Okay, and I will copy and paste that, and then I'll put it also in the description when we're done. And here is a point from Ray to the website that you can go check out. Okay, so moving kind of along, or did I miss anything, Holly? Or can we move forward?
Nope, I don't think so. Yeah, I just
Okay,
wanted to share that in case anybody knew,
yeah,
basically,
no,
especially the
absolutely.
nose thing, because I had no clue what
Well, and I'm
to
not,
do.
because I would be
Do they
concerned
get
too.
fungus, like fungal infection type things?
Like, I don't think I've ever heard of one. Ray, how about you?
What's that?
Have you heard of seahorses having fungal infections?
Uh, well, with my memory, I can't say that
Not
I've heard it and
never, right?
forgotten or whatever, but I've never experienced it myself.
Right.
Mhm.
And I've never
That's
had anyone come to me for advice on a case with it. I've
Mhm.
often
I've had
thought,
21 years of it, so
but it,
you'd think I would have had it.
right. And I
Yeah.
would say too, guys, that I've often thought my seahorse had a fungus infection because I
Mhm.
came from freshwater and then saltwater and then seahorses. So, that was something I knew could happen. And anytime I always thought it was a fungus infection, it was not, right? So I don't think I would focus on that. Like Ray said, deal with the tail bubble or the tail problems first, and see where we go after that. Zen Ginger wanted to know. I kind of want to know. She kind of knows what she wants now. She'd like to know what the potential pitfalls are of some of her choices, such as a sump with a refugium, because Ray said he didn't like that, basically.
Said it wasn't right.
Why don't you like the refugium, Ray?
Well, in my opinion, if you get a refugium going, first of all, you're going to have it lit on the cycle opposite what your tank is, so that's fine. But
That's a good thing.
when you put it, unless you have a hell of a good filtration system to keep the detritus from getting trapped in the refugium in with the mackerel, then it's going to sit there, decay, and going to release nutrients, and you're going to need an even bigger refugium to handle all the extra load there, or you're going to end up with the dissolved organic levels going up.
Okay.
I would suggest starting without the refugium, but leaving the possibility there to put it in if you wish down the road when you get more experience. It's not something that I would do right off the bat.
So
That would,
go ahead.
if you start so many of these other things, if you start doing them right at the start, and then you end up with problems, it makes it a lot harder to try and pinpoint what the cause of the problems are. So if you start fairly simple and until you can learn the basics of it for that first year or so and get yourself knowing just what the system needs, and then you can make that determination that possibly you might want to try the refugium and see how it works for you, knowing that
But you have the basis.
you can take it out
Yeah.
and revert back to what you were doing before. But you need that. I really think it's best if you learn the basics first and learn how to look after it without too many other things. Now, something like a protein skimmer, that's pretty well a given. Either that or some way to like use a carbon reactor. Um, that is definitely going to help. But again, you can do without it. It just means doing more water changes and more due diligence with cleaning the tank, making sure the stuff that's hidden gets unhidden so you can remove it. So
So I
there's
literally had
so many possibilities.
I literally had a whole argument against Ray, and then he spoke, and I was like, "Oh shit, that makes sense." Right? So let me just say,
No, I totally agree with Ray because
I know, but wait, hang on. Let me speak my piece. And then you said you like that idea, not opposed to baby steps, and that really is the absolute best
Mhm.
advice with seahorses. Because if you start, like I started with a massive macro tank, and I loved it, and I got lucky, right? Some people don't, so it is best to start with the basics and work your way up. And then if you add something, and then if there's a problem, that's the problem, right? He's right. If you do too
Yep.
many things, you can't figure out what the problem is. I can make a million arguments for macros though, because you guys know I love macros. I love refugiums. I love algae scrubbers. I think they're amazing, but they're also the type of thing that you can um, mess up with, if that makes sense. I know you wouldn't, Zen Ginger, but I just mean in general. Like if you tell somebody, oh yeah, you have to have, or the best way to do a seahorse tank is to have a refugium or an algae scrubber or whatever, and then they don't grasp the concept that you have to remove the algae or it's not working, right? Then you run into all these problems like Ray's talking about, where there's buildup, and depending on how you set up the refugium, like if you're using like stuff like sand, mud, whatever, then is that building up and does it release and all that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and agree with Ray that the best way to do it would be to start simple, get to know your seahorses, their behaviors, because again, if you have seahorses that are shy and that aren't really active, then that's different than the seahorses I've always kept that are super active and rush to the tank and greet you every time. But if you set up the tank simply and then added things and then they became shy, then you would know something's going on. Versus if you set it up with everything that you ever want in the tank right away and they act shy, you're going to be like, are they just shy or is there a problem? And then what's the problem? Is it the refugium? Is it this? Is it? So I do agree with Ray. I'm going to let Holly talk, and then I'm going to make my points for once you get accustomed to your seahorses, know how, exactly what they need to eat, exactly how they act, get to know their personalities. I'm going to make the argument for macros because I love them. But go ahead, Holly.
Oh, I was just going to say it. I think it's best not to overcomplicate things in the beginning when you're just getting started. So I agree with Ray on that.
Gotcha.
I want to also mention that you can, if you don't start that refugium up to begin with, then you've got, say, that first year or so that you're going to be able to see what happens in your sump. You're going to see what accumulates in there. If you don't have a good enough filtration system and stock system and that, then you're going to end up with large pieces getting out of there. The other problem is that even when you do have something to trap it, like a filter sock and that, there are smaller particles that will go through that filter sock. When they get through there and into the sump, then they end up clinging together and they make bigger particles in time. So you'll be at that point, you should be able to see them and know that you have a problem there. And if you do have that happening, then that stuff's going to get in with the mackerel, and it's going to be a lot harder to clean out when it's in the mackerel.
Like Holly found in her bio balls, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Where's all this crap in here?
Now, I will say that I agree with everything just said. Start simple. You guys saw me making faces at first while Ray was talking because I was like, macros are awesome, right? I agree with him. Start simple. But once you do know your seahorses, I'm telling you, the best tanks I've ever kept had macros in them, in the tank, macros in the sump, or scrubber. I think using that natural method of filtration really does work, but I do absolutely agree with him. Start simple, learn your seahorses, then add what you want to add and make sure that it doesn't cause any changes. You might add a refugium down the road and all of a sudden things are like even better, and all of a sudden you've got, if you want babies, you got babies everywhere or whatever. Ray, you said you do a scrubber before a refugium. Why is that?
Well, first of all, it's not going to trap so much crap in it. You've got slow flow going through it, and most of the crap is going to settle out before it actually gets taken up going through the refugium. And the refugium will do the same thing.
Right. And I get your point. There's not as much flow through a refugium typically. In my reef tank refugium, it was literally an overflow to the refugium. Mine wasn't set up very well. I was new. But, anyways, there's different ways you can do it. It depends on what you're trying to do. So, here's another thing, then, that I would say. Are you wanting to do a refugium just because you like macros and want to have them in the system somewhere? Or are you doing it for filtration purposes? Because that matters too. Because I can absolutely, I think I promised you I'd get you a list and then never did. Sorry. I will work on it this week of macros that I would suggest putting in a tank versus putting in a refugium. Because my first tank was a macro tank. There was no refugium. It was the tank, right? And again, I'm going to back up and say Ray's right. Start simple so you can learn your seahorses. But there are specific macros that I would put in a tank versus a refugium that, you know, you can keep them, love them, make a beautiful tank eventually, and not even have to worry about the problems that come with a refugium, because tank macros can handle higher flow, higher light, da 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 da. They all love higher light, you know that, but you get my point. I hope. I think. Let me know if I didn't make it. Um, but yeah. And okay, and I'm gonna go back to the other questions too, I promise, guys. But Zen said, what about the Gorgonians? Don't I want to get those going before adding the horses to make sure they don't just die off and pollute the tank? Or are they okay to add after? We're gonna go back to the other questions, Ray. But what do you think about the Gorgonians? I've got my answer. I want to hear yours first.
I can't answer on that because I've never had gorgonians in a seahorse tank. I had them in my reef tanks, but never in a seahorse tank. And it would, if you've got one that needs to be fed and not orientated to the lights, then it's going to be a bigger problem.
He just made the two perfect points. Number one, stay away from NPS, right? The non photosynthetic. They're really pretty. They do die off. Absolutely. You've got to feed them. They need, if you're not, and you don't want to pollute a seahorse tank more. I've seen really gorgeous NPS seahorse tanks. I don't think they last very long. That's my opinion. I'd love for someone to show me one that's lasted 5 years. I'll be, thumbs up. That's amazing. But then I'll want to know how they did it. Because if you're, putting a bunch of stuff to feed the Gorgonians, then it's more organics. So stay away from NPS, as Ray said. The other thing is you got to make sure, like in a seahorse tank, we've talked endlessly about the fact that we don't really care about lighting in a seahorse tank, right? You don't care. They don't need lighting. And if you're doing an artificial tank, you don't need lighting. If you're doing macros or if you're doing gorgonians, then you have to make sure you have adequate lighting for them. However, in my opinion, in my tanks, the Gorgonians that I bought, which were photosynthetic, they don't need that much light, right? So I've kept I'm gonna have to make you a list, to be honest, because I've kept many Gorgonians without problem. I've done it both ways. I've added them first before the seahorses. I've added them after. One thing I would say with Gorgonians, if you're gonna add them after, I know everybody's like, I don't want to need another tank, but I would quarantine them, because the one problem that I had with Gorgonians was not that they died off. It was that on the base of one of the most beautiful Gorgonians I ever got, it was fluffy and frilly and flowed and so pretty, but it had hydroids on the base and I didn't see them. And then I had hydroids in the seahorse tank. It was an adult erectus tank, so it wasn't the end of the world, but you just don't want hydroids in a seahorse tank, period. So I would say quarantine, feed the quarantine tank. Like, even if you just have a simple tank with Gorgonians, right? Feed it to make sure there's no aptasia and there's no hydroids anywhere on the Gorgonian or in the base of the Gorgonian, excuse me. Yeah, no, you can, and we're giving you worst case scenarios here, Zen. I loved my Gorgonians and my Seahorse tanks. I mean, I don't have them currently because I'm trying to breed, right? So I have a very simplistic tank. But in every display tank that I ever set up, I had Gorgonians and macros. So raise right, start simple, add as you go. I would definitely so that's I guess the answer to your question. Sorry, I'm jumping all around. I've done it both ways, but I would say in this case, start simple, buy things that you want to add, quarantine them just for observation. When you quarantine, make sure that you throw some mysis in that tank, right? Because that's what's going to make, and I'm sure you know this, but I'm
The
saying it for
pests
anybody
will come
else.
out.
Right. If you just stick macros and gorgonians in a tank with a light and say I'm observing, they're not going to come out. They'll stay hidden. I'm sure you know this Zen again, but I'm just saying it for anybody else who watches. What you have to do is you have to throw mysis or phyto or whatever. You have to throw food in the tank.
Food.
That way the aptasia and all of a sudden everything starts coming out because I don't know, can they smell? It's not
They
a smell.
want
They
the food,
sense.
I'm
They
sure.
sense the food. So make sure you feed any kind of not hospital quarantine tank. But I would definitely say quarantine. But and I've done the exact opposite. I've set up with macros and gorgonians off the bat. If you're wanting to play it safe, follow Ray's advice. He's not wrong. He is absolutely right. And Ray made the point, many seahorses don't like intensive lighting. Absolutely. And you're talking about algae. Seahorses will grow algae on them, right? But in my personal experience, I have never had to provide such lighting that it became a problem for just macros and gorgonians. That's why we say don't add SPS to a seahorse tank, right? You can't. Number one, SPS needs too high of lighting. Number two, the seahorse is going to hitch on it and then, kill it basically. So there's reasons why we say don't add certain things. But macros and gorgonians, I've never had a problem providing the light they need without hurting the seahorses. But Ray, did you want to say anything else about the intensive lighting?
Well, the question was brought up about grasses, and
Okay.
they need even more intensive lighting than macro does. So for that reason alone, or I shouldn't say alone, for that reason primarily, I would hesitate to recommend any. The other thing, to the best of my knowledge, and I'm no expert on grasses, but I believe they not only use the light to to develop and grow. I believe the root system also removes nutrient from the substrate. So you need a substrate that's suitable for them as well. So it's not something I'd recommend for a seahorse tank.
Well, and again, it depends on the seahorse tank you're trying to develop. I again agree with Ray. If you're brand new to seahorses, even if you've done other fish, he's absolutely right. Start simple. You can always add, you can always change. I like that advice. I'm going to stick with it. But you can do these things. Again, what he said is right again with the grasses. They do need more intense lighting. That might be more of something you would put in a refugium if you decide to go that route eventually at it. Um, I never kept grasses in the tank. I stuck with, well, like I said, and I saw you asked if I got onto the site and looked at the macros on Alyssa's site. No, I didn't. I'm so sorry. My boss is on vacation. I've been like literally 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day, and then I'm freaking exhausted. So I apologize. I will get on there this week. I promise. My boss is back. Um, so I'll get on there and look and give some recommendations. But I'm also going to do a list because I already started making one years ago. So I just need to find it and update it. But there's a list of macros I would keep in a display versus in a refugium or a sump because of how they grow. Like I think Cora Work said earlier, Calerpa, what's wrong with you? Right. So my mistakes in the past can help you in the future, right? I would never add Calerpa to a seahorse tank ever again, ever. Okay. And other people will disagree with that. Depends on what you're trying to do, but I wouldn't do it because it's too much work. There's too many problems that can arise. and that kind of thing. So I promise you this week, Holly, don't let me forget. Message me like on Saturday and be like, "Did you do that list?" Please, and I will make sure that I do this
I
week.
gotta try and remember to get you to remember.
Yeah, I know,
And
right? We all need reminders.
so what? A list of
Um,
macros, you said?
yes, I want to finalize my list of macros I would put in a tank, macros I would put in a refugium or sump, and take a look at Alyssa's site and say, oh, these are the macros I would absolutely buy. And again, I did say quarantine any Gorgonians or macros, but if you're buying from someone like Alyssa, the I'm never gonna publicly say don't quarantine, right? But
Yeah.
I probably would not, because then I would trust that they are already raised in a secure facility where seahorses are being kept and raised. So take that as you will.
Yeah, and I
But
think it probably says on her site, yeah, if they're aquacultured and safe to add and stuff, and I would trust
exactly,
that. Yeah.
I would too. Absolutely. I would trust Alyssa's site. Okay. So really quick, I'm kind of jumping around. I know, I'm really sorry, but did we ever answer the hydrogen peroxide question? Can you use things like hydrogen peroxide on a
I
seahorse
don't
wound?
think we did.
Okay. Ray, thoughts?
I've never done it, and I'm not entirely sure why. I think there was a discussion many years ago with Dan about that,
Okay.
and I don't know how it was resolved.
All right.
But I know after that, still, I never ever used it. I preferred to use the bio bandage.
Hmm.
So I've used hydrogen peroxide in the water. I've
Yeah,
used hydrogen peroxide
Hmm.
in many different ways, dealing with seahorses. I can tell you hydrogen peroxide is one of Dan's favorite things. He uses it in his house, like in his air conditioners and stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, he loves the stuff.
I use it for
I can't,
cleaning and stuff, but yeah, I've never
yeah,
put it on a seahorse directly.
directly on a seahorse. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one too. I'm making a list here. Macros, peroxide. I got you. But
it
I
will
want to,
hurt.
huh?
She was wondering if it would help or hurt. Well, I can't say it'll help, but it will hurt.
It
Yeah.
will.
When a seahorse gets, for instance, a bacterial infection on their tail, you can see that it's bothering them. They won't use it because it's hurting them.
Mhm.
And so if they have that kind of nerve system, then if you put hydrogen peroxide on it, they're going to feel it.
Yeah, how do you
Okay.
feel when you put it on a cut?
Right, right. So, okay, I'm sorry, Zen. I'm trying to jump around here. I assume seahorses have a slime coat like most fish, but they
No,
don't. They don't.
no.
No. Yeah. No, they're that's one of the ways that they're different. I know what you're talking about, the slime coat on most fish. I came from that background too. But no, seahorses are, wait till you have to handle one. They feel completely
Yeah.
different. They're not slimy at all.
They're
They're
hard,
like
but
almost rough.
very soft like velvet, like a velvet skin
Right.
over
Right.
hard shell.
Yeah. No, that's what it is. Literally, Holly. It's they have really hard bony plates.
Mhm.
You see the
Mhm.
ridges, and then they have this soft velvety skin over it, which is very delicate, right? So
Mhm.
I'm absolutely not saying yes, go throw peroxide on a seahorse. I'm going to check on it. I don't,
Mhm.
I, at this point, I would say not directly on the seahorse. You can use it in the water. You can use it for different purposes. Let me check on using it as a direct um, thing. But okay. And if so, maybe this buildup from potentially using his snout to keep him upright. Yeah. So I think we answered that. They don't have a slime coat. So no. All right. Sorry, trying to jump around here. And then Bonnie asked, nope, that's the same question. Bonnie asked, I saw an ocean rider to feed 4 to 8 mices per seahorse twice a day, but I see tanks with several hundred Mustang floating around their tanks. I think she meant mysis. Okay, so Why? Okay, first, what are your thoughts, Ray? I've got an answer, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I never had a seahorse that would live on that amount of feeding and twice a day.
Right.
Heck no.
Right. How much do you currently feed, Holly? How much do you currently feed?
Oh my gosh. I probably couldn't count how many pieces they eat. Like Sadie'll sit and eat probably close to a quarter of a cube of mices. So
Mm-hmm.
was that maybe 20, 30? I don't know, but she can eat a
Right.
lot. She can she can pack them in.
Right.
Maybe they were talking about juveniles pre-sale, that they're really small.
Feed 40
Maybe I can't imagine anyone saying that 4 to 8 pieces of mysis twice a day would be enough for seahorses. That is absolutely incorrect. I'm sorry if that's what's online. It's not right. Okay. So I have a video out there. It's older. It's an older video, so don't judge me for the quality, but it basically tells you guys how I determine how much to feed seahorses. I also have a video on the feeding methods. I was trying to look them up, but then I don't want to like be looking them up while I'm live. So I will try to link them when I'm done. But the feeding methods video talks about the difference between broadcast feeding, dish feeding, and target feeding. Okay. So target feeding is when you take a baster and you have picky ass seahorses like my Barbori that would not eat, if I threw food in the tank, they would just like be like, nope, not eating it. So I had to literally take a baster and throw a piece of food at them at a time. With them, even
Goby.
though,
My
yeah,
Goby's like that.
and Cheryl, if Cheryl was here right now, she'd be like, Kelly, you didn't use enough tough love. If you had just not fed them, they would have done. Well, I'm not good at tough love. Okay, so I target fed them where I would use a turkey baster and shoot food at them, and then they'd eat it and they got to know the baster, and they would see the baster and they'd get all excited knowing they were getting their food. But even then, I never counted, to be completely honest with you, and it's been a few years since I kept Barbori. But even then, I would stand there for a good half hour feeding them. So there's no way it was 4 to 8 pieces per seahorse because they ate a lot more than that. Um, when you talk about broadcast feeding, that's when you throw food and let it fly. That's probably what you're seeing, Bonnie, when you see tanks like that. I've got videos out there showing broadcast feeding. Again, I'll link my videos when we're done. That takes certain seahorses too. I'm going to let Holly talk now in a minute and just talk about her seahorses and how they prefer dish feeding. It just depends on the personalities of your seahorses. In my current tank, I have I have 2 tanks, but in my current tanks, I basically broadcast feed, but the difference is I turn the pumps off. So it's not flying everywhere like I used to do. It's floating in, and they eat it in the water column, and then they eat it off the floor. And they just prefer not to eat it off the floor, to mention that. So I usually like blow it so that it goes around and everywhere. But that has worked for me better than dishes, mainly because I'm lazy and I don't want to clean the dishes. I'll be honest. But Holly, you like the dishes, so talk about the dishes.
I do. So I actually do 2 different ways because I have 2 tanks, and I have one tank that I use feeding dishes in. And actually, it's my favorite way. It's a lot easier to clean up than my other tank where I broadcast feed pretty much the same way Kelly does. Um, Basically, I trained them. Once they learn about the turkey baster, they'll go wherever the turkey baster goes to eat. So you can teach them to eat from a dish that way if you want to. So they know their meal times. They'll come to the dish for breakfast. They'll come at lunch. They'll come at dinner. They'll sit nearby at that time. and look, watch for me to walk by or whatever, say, hey, mom, it's time for a meal. So then I put, about how much they'll eat in a few minutes in the dish. Now, Dandy, as you've seen before, he's clumsy. He's kind of handicapped. So with his dish, he has a tendency to spill it sometimes. Like if he wants to change positions, he'll spill what's in the dish and he won't eat it off the ground. So I suck it back up with the turkey baster, put it back in his dish for him, and then he'll eat it. Um, my other seahorse in that take, Sadie's the same way. She won't eat off the floor, and they don't want to eat in the water column. They only want to eat out of their dish. But it makes it easier at the end of mealtime. I don't have as much to siphon out. Now, in my other tank, what I do is I turn off the pumps and I squirt their food in, near where they are, and so they go hunting for it. Leave it a few minutes, and then I have one inside the tank quick filter like Ray uses. I turn that on to kind of blow the food around a bit at the end to get it, so any last bits get blown around for them to see and get before I siphon the tank out. But that's a lot more siphoning than my other tank does.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though I have my flow directed to where it gathers mostly in one spot, there's still places like it might get stuck at a plant or
Yep.
decoration or a thing over there, or here's a little pile there. So I'm siphoning all over the place, where as in the tank where I use the dishes, I pretty much only have to siphon directly out of the dish and the little area where Dandy eats because he spills everywhere.
Well, and Ray made the comment, if you're siphoning that much, you're feeding too much, Ray.
Mhm.
I actually have a video out there about how to determine how much to feed your seahorses, but I want to hear Ray's thoughts.
Well, it took me a while to get it down, but for me, um, I learned how much each tank took, and every tank was different.
Yep.
Even when maybe had the same number of seahorses in a tank, that
Yep.
didn't. There was still variances there, but I would experiment and find how much they would consume in that 12 to 15 minutes,
Yep.
um, and just gradually cut it back. And I have the advantage of having scales that I could weigh out small portions.
Mhm.
And so it got so that I could weigh out and know how much I was feeding. Then it got to the point where I could portion these little bits without even weighing them. I could check once in a while just to make sure I wasn't drifting, but I would get to the point I knew how much I could put in each tank um, without actually having to weigh it. And if I inadvertently ended up having to siphon out afterwards, either I made a mistake and fed too much, or I got a problem with the tank, and I better watch and make sure that I take care of it.
So again, guys, I know I say I'll post things and then I forget, but literally Holly's going to remind me. I'm not going to forget. I will repost the 2 videos about how to figure out how much to feed seahorses and then the different feeding methods. As soon as we're done here, they will be available. They already are, but I'll repost them. But I would say the only thing I have a problem with what you're saying, Ray, is that we have determined that lately the food is shit. I mean, like, you get these tiny little
Yeah.
pieces. I agree with you, Ray, that you can determine how much to feed your seahorses, right? Where do I repost? By the way, I will repost a short that leads you to a link here on YouTube, and I will repost on Facebook also as soon as we're done. Ray's going to check up on me, so I will make sure I do it. But I was going to say, the problem lately is when I try to broadcast feed a tank or whatnot,
Mhm.
and I use my methods that determine how much my tank needs, and I know how much they need, But then even I've tried different nets. You guys have helped me along the years figure out, okay, you need a wider hold net, right? Because it's allowing too many small pieces to end up getting into the tank.
Mm.
But even with like hugely wide nets, I'm ending up with these crap little tiny pieces that the seahorses won't eat. So I'm gonna say yes, you can determine how much to feed. Yes, you can determine the best feeding method for your tank, but you always still have to look and siphon, in my opinion, because sometimes, and we also have discussed that the
Yeah.
batches of food
And
are different throughout the year.
yeah, because what I've discovered, well, it's easier for me to figure out how much to feed with the seahorses that eat out of dishes. Because, like I said, the food stays pretty much contained. Now, where I broadcast feed, they're picky and they don't go eat all the food. If I don't feed them enough food to have extra left over, usually they won't eat enough, I found. And that's how I got them to start fattening up, is because, like you said, Kelly, the food's all different sizes and pieces.
Yeah.
So they won't eat every piece of food that's in there. They're going to look for the big choice pieces and eat those. And if they don't see enough of those, well, they just rather not eat. And and so they're starting to plump up again now because they were getting kind of skinny for a while. Like I said, now that one can't fit through the through the door, which
Right,
he's
right.
finally getting
Fatty.
where I
Right.
want her to be. But part of it was, I think, was just there wasn't enough food in there for them to choose from and get what they wanted.
Well, and I
They're
really truly wish.
lazy. Those ones in that tank are lazy. They're not chasing the food everywhere and finding all the pieces. They want to eat the food that's around them. And they're
Yes. And I
gonna
would say
pick and
again,
figure out, which one they want.
if Cheryl was here right now, she would be saying, Kelly and Holly, you're
It's that
ridiculous.
tough love.
You need to use tough love and give them what they get and they will eat it. Chop chop.
But then
We're
she would
we're
tell me
mommies, right?
at the same time, though, she would tell me my seahorses were too skinny.
Right, 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 right.
And I don't have
So
time to feed them all day, every few hours, a little bit of
right.
food. We have to have a
Well,
kind of a compromise here.
right. So I would say overall, the answer to that question is 4 to 8 mice per seahorse is not enough, period. Especially not 2 times a day. Ray would suggest feeding seahorses 4 to 6 times a day, correct?
4, not 6 times.
Mhm.
Just
4 is
4.
sufficient.
Okay,
Now,
I'm
if you
thinking
can do it
fry.
and if you
Sorry.
want to, do it 6 times, but I don't think there's a need for it. But
Unless
the main thing
you've
is
got fry
for
that you're feeding.
Right. I'm thinking fry. Right.
for people that have problems trying to feed 4 times a day, all you have to do is get 20 minutes to half an hour at the very least in between some feedings. So when you get up in the morning, you can feed them, and then again just
Go
before you go
shower.
to work, you
Right.
can
Yeah.
feed them again. There's 2 feedings there. The main thing is to uh, get them to feed what they can feed in that 12 to 15 minutes, and um, and then it won't get pushed through the digestive tract and
Right.
be just wasting nutrients and putting them into the water. And by doing it 4 times a day, like when you come home, you can feed them again. Before you go to bed, you can feed them another time. There's 4 times now.
Hmm.
And by spacing it out like that and only giving them what they need in that short period of time, first of all, you're going to cut down on the nutrients that you're throwing into the tank, either via direct food that isn't getting eaten or picked up, but also by the amount of feces that are produced.
Yeah.
And you'll end up seeing over time, you'll see your seahorses will start to build out, get a little bit wider in the body. And when they get wider in the body, then you know that they're going to be more capable of dealing with problems when something happens in the tank.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. And yeah, unlike us humans, we want our girls wide, right? Nothing wrong with wide. I just don't want to be anymore, dang it. But no, totally agree with what Ray said. And I don't want to like explain it all right now because it would take too long. Watch the video that I will repost. And I'll put a comment in the description of this video to link you to it. But it's basically just how to figure out how much to feed. And it is based on tank. There's no number. I can't say, oh, they need 20 pieces every this many hours. No, it's based on your tank. It's based on your seahorses. If you have seahorses that don't eat as much, then you might have to feed more. If they train to eat more in a feeding, then you can, minimize. Watch the video. I promise I'll post
My
it.
seahorses eat less at lunch too. They have different
Okay.
times a day where they eat more, and
Oh, that's a good point. I would say a
they're
good,
not big
really
on
good.
lunch. I feed less at lunch. They're not as interested in the food at lunchtime. They don't eat nearly as much as breakfast and dinner.
Well, I would say a really good point is one thing that I've noticed absolutely with every seahorse I've ever kept without fail, you have to, if you have a lighting system in any way, shape, or form, whether it be your room, whether it be a light over the tank, it doesn't matter. You can't just flip it on and feed them. They literally,
Have to
I
wake
think
up.
they sleep. They have to wake up.
Mhm.
So if you flip on your light and throw food in the tank, you're going to come back to a pile of food, right? So give your seahorses a minute after you turn the light on. Set up a timer, whatever. Have the light turn on before you even get up.
Mhm.
Give them at least half hour to like wake up, get responsive, know you're about to feed. They will get used to your schedule no matter what your schedule is, for
Mhm.
sure. But I've just noticed that no matter what, if I try to flip on the light and feed because I'm in a rush and I'm late and
Mhm.
whatever, they will not eat it. They'll be like, "Wait, what? What's
Not
going on?"
awake yet. Yeah, they
Right,
take a while to
exactly.
warm up.
Yep. And um, what else do we have to say? Because there was a couple more macro questions I had to cover. Anything else about feeding, Ray? Or did
Uh,
we cover it?
no, I don't know. I
You were
can
you
answer
were
this
you were doing
question.
something else.
I
Okay.
wasn't listening to you.
Oh,
Oh.
thanks, Ray. Look at that. Now listening to us. All right.
I'm
So
old. I can't do two things at once anymore.
I know, me either. I'm with you. No problems. No, I'm not mad. Zen, you did come back and say photosynthetic only, purple calibrana. Oh, wait, let
Purple
me look that up
candelabra.
because yeah, but I feel like that's not non-photosynthetic. Hang on, give me 2 seconds to look it up. Cal, because I didn't realize that that was non-photosynthetic. Is it the bright purple, really pretty? Yeah, if it has, well, I shouldn't say that either because that's not really true. Okay, so no, that's photosynthetic. What do you mean?
That's she said
Um,
she said photosynthetic only. So purple
she said,
candelabra is, right? Yeah.
"Oh,
She's
I'm
saying
so sorry.
because
I'm
she answered
rereading it.
something else. She says, "Oh no, she was thinking of photosynthetic only. Purple
I got you now.
candelabra is the one she likes."
Thank you, Holly. I was thinking she was saying, "Oh no, I want this one that's non-photosynthetic." I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Okay. And yeah, the Gorgonians, I mean, I'll get with you on the side and then when you do come in just via voice, not video, we can talk more about it, but yeah, I love my Gorgonians. You're going to love Gorgonians in the tank. What else have I missed? Oh, she asked in a like say quarantine situation or if she set up before she added seahorses to test gorgonians and macros for aptasia or hydroids or whatever, can you use baby brine shrimp as the tester food? And you're talking live baby brine shrimp, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah,
I've
I
never
think
I've never done it, but I don't see why not.
because she
It's
has
just a food
tons of
source.
eggs. Yeah. You could even just
But I
put
mean,
fish food in there. Like it doesn't have to be anything
yeah,
fancy, just food, something that will
right.
come out.
The only reason I'm like questioning my answer to you is because with live food, like I know this sounds ridiculous, and anybody in the fish world is going to be like, plants can't smell, seahorses can't smell, whatever. But I feel like they sense when there's food, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And with live brine shrimp, I feel like that's another animal. If I know I'm not making sense.
Well, if
I
it's
would
something they
do
don't
frozen mysis.
eat, will all pests go after the baby brine shrimp, or will there be some pests that are not interested in it and won't come out?
Yeah, whatever makes them come out when food hits the tank, I would do a frozen dead food because that's
Mhm.
what they like, is my opinion. You can still try baby brine shrimp, but I still, before I put it in my tank, I would throw in some frozen mysis or whatever and just let it
You can
sit for a
just
minute.
use, I think, a piece of people shrimp, like from your freezer.
Well, as
Like
long as you're
if you eat shrimp and you have like shrimp they used to make cocktail shrimp or something, a piece of cooked shrimp or something.
whatever it does to the water, whether they smell it, sense it, whatever. I agree with Holly. I've never
Scott's
used live
Aptasia
people food.
loved that.
Oh yeah. And I was gonna say it, as long as you're talking about a hospital tank. I absolutely do not agree with like cycling a tank with, you know, people, shrimp, or any of that. That's not what we're saying. We're saying in a quarantine tank where you're just trying to get the pests to come out of macros or gorgonians. Ray hates seafood. Got it. And let's see. What else do we got here before we go?
That must
Um,
be late. My seahorses went to bed, so you can.
I know
The
Holly
light
just
went
went dark. Yeah, Holly went dark on us.
out.
So Zen said, I was thinking of doing a or a partition, excuse me, in the middle, and doing sand and gorgonians on one side with a Kessel pendant, and then leaving the other side unlit. Okay, you're beyond me. I can just tell you, like doing a sectioned tank. Is that what? Or are you talking about the sump? I think she's talking about the tank. Um, I don't even know what a Kessel pendant is. I'll be honest with
That's
you.
what that guy's
So,
using in his fry tanks. If you look on the
okay.
page, if you look on the Facebook page of Seahorse
Okay.
Whisper, he shared a video on there. It's pretty cool.
Okay. Well, let me look that up and we'll talk more about that next week, I guess. I've already got a list here. I've got videos to post. I've got Holly reminding me Saturday to get the macro list. So I'd better not make my list much bigger, but I will go look at that video and check out the Kessel pendant. I think when you jump in here with us, we're going to discuss all of this, in depth. And, you're going to come to the conclusions that you want to do because as you've seen, sometimes Ray and I or Holly and I will disagree about something. It just depends on what you want to do in your tank. There are basics that you can follow and end up successful, but the way you come about them can be different, if that makes sense. So we'll come back to that. And you said you like the lettuce style macros. I'm going to do my list of names because there are some of those slimy lettuce macros that are, I would say, no go for a seahorse tank, in or out. And now I'm getting a call from work. So we got about a 5-minute warning here, guys. Um,
Oh, and
didn't
she
know.
says she's only talking about a partition to keep the sand on. Like she wants sand on one side, not on the other, kind of like I did with mine for a while. A
Gotcha.
partition to
Okay.
keep the sand on one section.
You can always put
Yep. And
a
thank
large
you.
dish in one side.
Mm.
Just put the sand in the dish. You wouldn't have to worry about the partition. Then if you need to, you can just pick the dish up and the sand and everything with it. if the need is there.
Okay. And I know we're jumping around, guys, but I literally just got a text from work, so I'm going to have to go here in a second, or at least pause myself. Maybe you guys can keep talking. But Andrea said if you can find it locally, her LFS recently suggested trying Hikari Okanagan Lake freshwater mysis shrimp. Okay. So here's the problem with that. Number one, Cheryl has talked endlessly about the fact that freshwater mysis shrimp don't have the stuff.
The
We'll just say
nutrient
stuff.
profile, I guess.
Right. The nutrients that seahorses need. So I'm not saying that's wrong. You can do that as a feeding method, but if you're going to do that, make sure you're adding, live enriched foods once in a while or something because they're not getting and again, Cheryl would be better at this. I don't have there's 33% DHA and DPA and all that stuff. She does. She's not here. But I just know that when you talk freshwater mysis, it doesn't have the nutrients that the seahorses need long term. So nothing wrong with feeding freshwater mysis, especially if they'll eat it and they eat it well and it's bigger pieces. But just be careful that you're making sure they get their nutrients in another way, if that makes sense. And yeah, Ray, you said your abs wouldn't eat the large pieces of mysis.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
You
my
said
abs
your
wouldn't eat large ones. I had krill they wouldn't touch, and
yep,
I had jumbo Hikari shrimp. They wouldn't touch it, but the regular
yep.
Hikari they would eat that all day.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. They're kind of picky, right? I've never had Lucy, our friend Lucy, who started with the channel and has gone on to other things, but she used to deal with wild caught seahorses, raising them, conditioning them. She was a breeder. And she had seahorses that she couldn't put peppermint shrimp in a tank because the seahorses would eat the live peppermint shrimp. That's never been a problem for me. They don't even look at them twice. I mean, no, that would never happen in my tank. So it depends on what you're dealing with. But I've had seahorses that won't eat the big pieces too, or if they try to eat a bigger piece, they cough half of it up and whatever. So I stay away from the jumbo. I was just merely saying that with the regular Hikari packs, lately I've ended up with a lot of tiny pieces of mysis that don't even look like mysis. They're just floating pieces of yuck, and the seahorses want nothing to do with those, is what I'm saying. And I've tried a bigger net. It just I always end up with them. And you did say, Ray, PE is freshwater, but it is enriched before
Yeah.
packing. Right. I'm
There's
sorry. Thank you for making that point.
a lot of mysis is freshwater version. Most of it is
Right.
brackish, and the brackish one is better.
Yes. Thank you for making that point. And what's the other one?
There are no
No,
saltwater
Hikari.
mysis.
Hikari. Yeah, but Hikari saltwater.
No, it's brackish.
Hikari is
No,
brackish.
Brackish. If you get
really.
saltwater type of mysis,
What do I
you
know?
better call them mysids.
Yeah,
You're right. You're right. I hate that mysis versus mycid. We'll have that whole discussion next week. Gina's Reef, you're late. I just got a call from work. I've got to go here in a second. I'm so
And I
sorry.
got home late,
Um,
so I haven't even fed my dogs yet. So they're sitting here begging.
oh no. Okay. Well,
yeah.
yeah. If I missed any questions, guys, we will come back to it next week. I promise. We're here every week. But I missed it. No, I noticed mine chase all different pieces as I broadcast feed each. Andrea, you need to jump in here with us one week because you are as experienced as they come with seahorses. We want you to get in here and give your opinions and your advice and everything because, as you've seen, sometimes we disagree. And whatever your opinion might be might help someone down the road. So contact me. We'd love for you to join us on one Wednesday, any and all weeks. Absolutely. I know exactly who you are, and I know that your advice is good. So come in here, join us for sure. That's interesting, though, that we have different experiences. Very interesting. And Gina's Reef said she does start her tank with raw shrimp. Yeah, I get it. I just have, and I'm not, like I said, people do things differently. There's not really, well, actually, that's not true. There are some things that are just wrong. I'm not saying that that's a wrong thing. I'm just saying that in a Seahorse tank, when you're so worried about organics and we don't really know what human food does to the tank, Holly's used it. She's had no problems. I just don't. That's where I'll leave that. Um, Ulva is a weed. Yeah. Ulva's one I would not put in a Seahorse tank, in my opinion. And
Well, when I used shrimp not to start a tank, I was using it to feed a fish.
right. And I know that, like,
But in the
Mark.
old days, they used to tell you to
Yes.
start a tank with a live
Yes.
fish and let it die, basically.
Absolutely.
Back in the
Well, and
old days,
yes.
when I
Yes.
started, I'm giving away my age.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm giving away mine, but that might be how I started my reef tank. Oh, nope. I didn't say that live, did I?
Okay, I'm
but
leaving
no.
now.
All right,
Good
bye,
night,
night.
Ray.
I'm actually gonna have to go too, guys. But I was gonna say there's different methods. We learn over time. You know, you can't look back and say what they knew then is wrong because
It
it worked for
worked.
them.
Mhm.
I was gonna say Mark of Me Loves Reef has a whole video about starting a reef tank with a piece of shrimp,
Mhm.
a human food shrimp. I love Mark. I think he's brilliant. He knows so much about reefing. He's great.
Mhm.
So I'm not arguing the point if that's what you want to do. I'm merely saying that with seahorses, when organics is such a bigger issue than in, say, a reef tank, when you're going to have coral or whatever taking up nutrients, I just would not suggest it. That's all I'm saying. If you did it and it worked, good.
Well, I have
Cool.
to say, once I learned the ammonia method, it is a lot easier
Right.
and quicker. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But nobody
And less.
said you could do that back in the day. I'd never heard of
Right.
that, you know,
If
until
you
for
said
you
add
guys
ammonia to a
recently.
tank to cycle it, they would have been like, what? You know, right.
Yeah.
You had to learn.
Yeah.
So no big deal. And I have older videos that I'd love to delete because, you know, I said things that now I would disagree with. Shit
Mhm.
happens. I will, you guys, post the 2 videos about feeding methods and what was the other? Feeding methods and how to determine how much to feed. They're kind of general, but they get you in the mindset of how to do it. And then you just have to really figure out your own tank.
Mhm.
I love that so many people are joining now, and I hate that we have to go. Guys, come earlier next week because we want all these questions in this conversation. Andrea and Zen, with me on the side. We need you to jump in here. Again, even if you don't want to be on camera, you can just be voice. And we can have these discussions, you know, one-on-one that would really help other people and hopefully help all of us, right? But for tonight, Holly, was there anything else
Nope.
for tonight? Okay.
Nope.
If I missed your question, feel free to message any of us on the side or ask next week. And I will go through it after I contact my work, who are texting me like crazy now. Sorry, guys.
Uh-oh.
I know, right?
What happened?
But for tonight, what?
What happened?
I don't even know. I haven't looked at the message. I'm like, I'm not
You
even
have to
looking
wonder
until I
that
can
when
go.
you're like, oh no, what
I know.
happened?
Well, I'll let you guys know next week what happened. It's probably something silly. We have a lot of new people. All right. But anyways, for tonight, thank you so much to everybody who came and contributed and asked questions and shared in the conversation. This is how we all learn and become a community and help each other, right? This is why we do this. And I really appreciate everybody who comes. So we will be back next week. If there's any guests coming up, I will absolutely let you know. If you have a guest that you want interviewed on this channel, let me know. I'll contact them. And with that, I think we're going to have to say Happy Wine Wednesday. Sorry. Got to go deal with real life now. It sucks. I wish I could just be in Seahorse World all day. I sure do. But for tonight, let's say Happy Wine Wednesday, and we'll be back next week. I will post those videos within 20 minutes. All right.
Cheers.
Happy Wine Wednesday.